Hello everyone, so in today's video I'm going to be guiding you the Title 3 of the 2021 TOK Essay prompts. And so before I start, I just want to say that these are all ideas, and of course you should try to make your TOK essay as personal and unique as possible, because you do get marks for having a unique or surprising essay to the examiner. Now, you always want to start your essay by defining the key terms, so labels is an important part of it, and you immediately want to connect it to language as a way of knowing. And then knowledge you can define in your own words, but according to Plato's definition, it is a justified true belief. As for necessity, it's important to note that this prompt is very absolute. It's saying that labels are always necessary. And so it's very easy for you to debate this and to say that actually there are maybe scenarios where labels aren't necessary. So in the introduction, you want to have a hook. So why is this important to you? But you also want to transmit the key idea. So in your own words, describe what does this prompt mean to you. And basically, the key idea is just that how can language kind of determine how we transmit our shared knowledge. And so this is a kind of Venn diagram taken from the TOK textbook, and it kind of shows how you have shared knowledge, which is kind of the shared TOK, AOK knowledge that you gain. For example, in the scientific fields, that would be shared knowledge. We all know, for example, that some animals are mammals, some are not, for example. But then we also have personal knowledge, so our personal understandings of the world around us, and this is very emotional, very kind of subjective and based on our own perception. So language is a way to kind of bridge these gaps almost, because it's making shared knowledge personal knowledge by giving it to you. So it's good in the introduction to kind of explain the role of knowledge and language together. And then in your introduction, you kind of want to finish it by presenting your own central knowledge question. So the central knowledge question is kind of a rewording of the prompt, but in your own words to kind of solidify what it is that you're going to be answering. So here are some potential central knowledge questions. The first could be, to what extent does language determine how we organize our shared knowledge? To what extent or how can simplistic knowledge prevent the transmission of knowledge? To what extent is reductionist language, so too simple language, helpful to understand knowledge? How can language obscure the full meaning of things? Or to what extent does knowledge sometimes impede us from assimilating shared knowledge into our personal knowledge? All of these are worthy central knowledge questions, but just make sure that your central knowledge questions are not too far from the actual prompt. So to choose the area of knowledge that you'd like to do, you can look at the darker blue parts of this circle, but really the ways of knowing that seem most relevant are language and reason, right? Because you're taking language and you're reasoning your understanding of the particular issue. So let's say we choose the natural sciences as our area of knowledge, and just keep in mind that you would have to narrow it down to either chemistry, biology, or physics. But in general, scientific knowledge, although it can facilitate the transmission of knowledge, can sometimes obscure how we actually got to that conclusion in the first place. So for example, if we give a particular organ a particular name, or if we give a particular object a particular name in general, how did we actually get there? And the truth is that we would get there through the scientific method, but we don't actually see that full reasoning process behind the label itself. A more kind of personal example would be when you look at a food label and it says, for example, that everything is all natural. What does that actually mean? Because in chemistry, everything is all natural. Nothing can just be not natural. So again, here the key ways of knowing are reason, shared knowledge, personal knowledge, but also kind of sense perception, right? Because the natural science labels come from observation and data gathering in the scientific method. Okay, and then our next paragraph would be the counterclaim. So cases where actually labels are useful more than they do harm. So the counterclaim would be that all scientific language is arrived by the scientific method. Scientific language must be precise and facilitate communication between international scientists. Right? So, for example, in biology, where the nature of knowledge or the purpose of knowledge is simply to explain the natural world, then labels do little more than just to kind of embody the natural world. Another example would be, for example, the periodic table, right? Because at the end of the day, language, all that it is a set of complex symbols. So anything is language, including the periodic table. And in that case, you can argue that there's not much meaning being obscured. If you choose the arts, then you have to kind of specify what type of knowledge you're talking about. What type of knowledge does arts give us? For example, books can give us conceptual knowledge about something that happened, but they can also give us moral knowledge about what is ethically correct in certain scenarios. So our claim for this could be, for example, that labels of artistic works in terms of like genres of books or genres or movements, artistic movements, kind of obscure the intentions that each author or painter or creator of art has in mind. And you can look at examples where authors fight the type of genre that their book is labeled in because they think that it doesn't really fully encompass the knowledge or the ideas that they're trying to transmit. And then the counterclaim could be that artistic knowledge really just depends between the reader or the watcher of art and the artwork itself. And then let's say you do the human sciences for your next two paragraphs as your other area of knowledge in the essay. So You also, again, have to narrow it down between psychology, sociology, economics as a human science. But for example, if we choose psychology, then we could argue that labels in psychology are actually pretty dangerous because it kind of forms a bias or prejudice in psychologists, right? If they get a patient that has already been diagnosed with, let's say, antisocial disorder, then they might take the patient and kind of reduce them to their label and not really realize that there are, of course, differences between different patients, even if they have the same diagnosis or label. But on the other hand, and the counterclaim for this psychology section would be that psychologists can only really produce knowledge about the potential diagnosis for the patient by using labels, right? How are they going to give the patient medication if they can't classify them into a particular label or condition? And then if you instead choose to do economics, then the counterclaim would be that economic models, labels, assumptions, really everything in economics is reductionist. It uses very simple language to transmit a very complex world. And on the one hand, this is really problematic because it obscures the full meaning. It obscures all of the assumptions that need to be made to actually accept a particular label or idea or model. But on the other hand, again, how can economics do without them, right? And the other thing is that economists understand that labels are always assumptions. No economist will tell you that a model is actually reflective of the real world. So in reality, it doesn't really constrain understanding because we understand they're just assumptions. Some important things to keep in mind is that your essay should be unique. You should be bringing up real life situations that are interesting to you and that maybe even have some relation to your IB courses. For example, if you bring up economics, you can talk about the game theory unit in economics and how some of these assumptions seem unfair and these labels don't transmit the full knowledge. Also, you should focus on the methodology of each area of knowledge, right? Like, how does natural sciences gain knowledge? How does human sciences gain knowledge? Why are these different? And you should be comparing different areas of knowledge and why their methodologies, why their nature of knowledge, purpose of knowledge differs. You also need secondary questions, at least two secondary questions after the central knowledge question to kind of help you advance the points that you're making. Okay, this is all for today's video. Thank you for watching. If you need more help with the TOK essay structure, then here you can click above and it will guide you to actually another video that looks more in depth about what the structure should be like. Also remember to try to modify. These are just ideas, right? So take these and work with them and make them as personal as possible. But I hope this was helpful and please leave in the comments what you'd like to see next.